All right, hello everybody. How many of you is here? Not a lot. So let me start in this way. We live in a really amazing time, and this is the phrase which people usually repeat 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and I repeat by myself as well. But the idea is a bit much more bigger than just repeat, because I really believe that we live in amazing time, because something is really different. So the idea is we have fourth industrial revolution now, and this is not a big surprise because three before already happened, but there is something different. All revolution has some changes, and this is not new, but number of changes or time needed to apply these changes is different. Right now we need much less time to apply much bigger changes. And let me show you a few examples to be sure that we are on the same page in terms of what actually is going on now in terms of ML or AI. I think most of you heard about autonomous vehicle, especially car. It's driving in US, sometimes unfortunately die people, and for this more famous happened. But right now I will show you something different. Probably you don't know about this. This is autonomous bicycle.
The Dutch cycle more than any other nation in the world, almost 900 kilometers per person. But that also means we have 350,000 bike-related injuries. Now imagine that we would make biking safer, smarter and easier by applying self-driving technology to biking.
We taught our self-driving bike to figure out where it is, what's around it, what will happen next, and what it should do. We leaned on Google's expertise in self-driving cars, but we had to adapt the technology to work on a bike. We decided to add 2 additional features. First, you can request the bike to pick you up wherever you are, and we developed a comfort mode, adjusting the pedals to a perfect resting position.
I think the self-riding bike could really give a boost to the economy, because people could also work on their bicycle. You work in your office, you work in your home, you work in your car. You could even work on your bike.
What do you think about this? Is it a good idea, bad? Any option? So, to be honest with you, I should say that this actually news coming in April, 1st April, but technology is still possible. I mean, right now we can find autonomous motorbike and so on, so it's possible, but this one is quite interesting idea. Another example, especially if I'm on Mobiconf now, related with assistant, which is running on mobile. Let's check what is possible even now, or actually not now, it's almost half a year ago.
Part of the assistant, and I would ask, how many calories does it have?
There are 95 calories in one medium apple.
So that's the... This is an experience that you can have where you have visual input and voice input together. But let me just show you one other example. I can try to get some money. How much input? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. How much is this in Swiss franc?
250 Polish zlotys equals 67 Swiss francs.
I've said this happened half a year ago because it's big difference. So 1 year it's quite a big period in terms of changes which can happen in the meantime, and right now this assistant works even better. And next example, just to show about potential, but also about risk which we have when we apply technology. I'm not sure that you are aware about this, but let me inform you. So China and score system in China.
For rent cars, I don't have to pay deposit, and this is also for a hotel.
已经被限制这个自由的出行了，就是订票啊，我们高铁和飞机都不行了。
我觉得这是错的。这个我们常常说要学习西方，一到这个限制政府权利的时候就不学了。这个是，包括这两天不是我们要降关税吗？汽车关税啊什么的，然后就说我们是自主的。
是，对，我还是觉得因为人口比较众多，所以你不可能所有的人你都非常信任。那如果真的像国家现在在努力去做的这个事情，每个角落都有这个就。
Okay, I will not finish the whole because it's quite long, but you can found it's usually how it works in our life. We have some pros and cons, and some good things come arrived with machine learning as well, but there are some kind of risk. And today I want to focus about area like machine learning or artificial intelligence. By the way, do you know what's the difference between AI and ML? There is a good joke. If company tell outside about what they're doing, they use phrase artificial intelligence, but if they hire people who will do it, they looking for machine learning specialists. So this is like, right now it sounds like the same, but by definition a bit different, or even more than a bit. But let's just focus on machine learning. It's quite precise area what we want to discuss today. And one definition is quite good one in terms of understanding if you don't have academic background, is machine learning's ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. By the way, how many programmers are here? I didn't see. Oh, okay, most of you. All right. So the idea is for programmer, you have some specification and you read the specification, you see some code and just type this code on your keyboard. This is what you're doing. So you explicitly programmed. In machine learning, you didn't explain line by line what it should be done. You just say, I want this, and do something under hood by yourself. Machine learning itself, it's not a new topic. Actually, it's like 100 years ago exists, or even more, even 200 years ago, there are some people who think about like, can machine be creative, or can machine think, and so on. So this is not the innovation topic in some kind of, but why right now it's so popular? Why country decide invest $1 billion? I'm not sure that you're aware about this, but United States, China, UK, France, all those countries invest billions of dollars or euros in AI strategy. Why it happened now? And the answer is quite simple. I think you know why, but let me repeat the same. The idea is works in terms of money. So machine learning right now, it's not only academic area, this is business. And first of all, you can make money, but this is actually not the big point. Much bigger point, if you don't use machine learning, you will probably lose your company in terms of few years, 5, 10 years. I think right now the most company understood this, especially big one. This is why they try to do anything, sometimes some crazy stuff, but try to do something to start to use it. For example, Netflix, it's a company which understands relatively quick that machine learning is big thing and you should start to use it. And they save at least $1 billion in a year by recommend good movies. By the way, who use Netflix? Most of you? Do you like recommendation? Okay. So this is why you subscribe and pay money, and they've calculated that in this way they save about $1 billion in a year. Another example about PayPal. They have a lot of machine learning underhood, and they have some problem with fraud detection. And what they do, they reduce about 1% fraud detection. So their model works better than before for 1%, and in this way they saved around 2 billion or something. So this is quite good example to see that it's not only words, this is not only like science fiction somewhere, this is real money which you can save for the given company. But how to understand machine learning itself? What is really important? What pieces do you need to start work with this? Let me explain this context because it's quite important to understand next area. This is a bit simplified. So we have three pieces. One of them is data. Second one is algorithms, or let's call it software. And another one is infrastructure, or let's call it hardware. And you have in the middle team which will be connected those things together. So if we check what's going on, let's say 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, we almost sucked for all areas. Maybe a bit here was quite good because we have neural network, but this neural network is not good enough. Data. There are different sources about how many data we have now and how this is growing up in time. This is some examples. This is not source of truth, but what is really repeatable from those all sources, this is the shape. So the shape looks like exponential growing, and 20 years ago we have 10 gigabytes in day. Right now in second much more. But on the other hand, I think most of you are aware about big data, but I think few of you probably are aware about smart data. Smart data means you can do something sensible with your data, because on the other hand, if you need only big data, you can run a random generator and just save terabyte data in hour, in day. You can host Hadoop and so on, and say on conference I have big data, but this doesn't make sense at all. The idea is to have some data which you can reuse and to extract some value, because this is what we want to do. About algorithms, we have some classical algorithms which works how works, and some of them works very good for some area, but for another works very bad. And for example, if we discussed about image classification, this is what I show for China score or analyzing video. We need something more complicated than previous algorithms, and this chart shown how deep learning, this is advanced neural network, works. I think right now it's good to mention about ImageNet. Do you aware about ImageNet? Competition ImageNet? Few people. So ImageNet's long story in short. ImageNet is competition which started 2010. The idea was, let's do something more complicated than only classify dog and cat. This is what actually Google does time and time. And the idea is we will have 1,000 classes, and we need predict better and better and better. And here is the error rate. When it started, it was quite big. Later, it's reduced, and here is quite good point. This is kind of 2012. I'm not sure. Do you remember this year? Everybody expects that everything will be finished, and I've traveled to United States because I've never been there, and I've decided I should visit at least once, because if this is the last year, I should see it. But in this time, something happened interesting in machine learning, because the difference between this orange dot and blue dot is quite big, and this is this man or his team apply convolutional neural network, which is called now usually deep learning, and to show how good it works in practice. And after this year, everybody use only deep learning to analyze image, and here, it's right now it works really good. It works even sometimes better than for human. So it means we have image, and if you check average human score, it will be worse than human score. Not for all cases, but for some of them. And one example what I really should explain as well, these dependencies. We have two dimensions, interpretability and capability. So linear model is quite the simplest one model, and usually most company who say that use machine learning, they use actually linear model. So it's interpretable. That means you can understand how it works and why it works. But on the other hand, you can solve relatively simple problem. But on the other hand, you won't probably solve much more complicated. For example, PayPal or Netflix or other companies, they use neural networks under hood because it's a problem much more complicated than just simple one. But for this case, so you can solve more complicated problem, but you don't have answer, or you don't have clear understanding why it works. You just have kind of black box, and it works or doesn't work. You can change something outside, but you don't understand for 100% why it works. Another thing what I want to explain about context, because it will be useful as well for mobile, we have some ecosystem. So this is not big surprise, like in mobile, in any other language, we have some ecosystem, some library exists, and here is the same. We have some, in machine learning area, we have some library for deep learnings, Keras, Cafe, TensorFlow. Do you know what is it? Okay. It's PyTorch, exactly. This is actually an interesting story, because TensorFlow is Google, developed by Google, not only, but mainly. PyTorch by Facebook, and the good news for us, like for customers or for developer, is that they compete with each other and they try to do better and better and better. So it's really nice when two big brothers beat and try to build something better than before. And there are another libraries like scikit-learn, XGBoost, libsvm, and so on, and all of them you can build some model, and what is interesting, you can reuse this model on mobile as well, and I will show you soon this. But another thing what I want to explain is that there is difference between algorithms and model, and I see that people usually don't see this difference. This is why I want to explain. So algorithm, this is kind of recipe. This is explain what you should do to achieve something. But model this is kind of state. This is actually what you did to achieve something. And sometimes model looks like this, like that. You have the same recipe, but the state can be a bit different. So what is most important for me, just to explain about this analogy, please remember that model, this is more about state. Algorithm is more about recipe. Another confusion what I see, because probably there are a lot of terminology and people lost a bit, what is better? For example, sometimes people ask me, what is better, Inception or TensorFlow or Python or something else? So this is totally different dimensions. So we can say, a bit simplified, we have 4 dimensions. First one is just language which we use, Python, R, or another one. Second one is framework which we use for example, for deep learning. It can be TensorFlow, PyTorch, Cafe, Keras, and so on. Another story is we have some recipe or architecture of this network, and this can be Inception, ResNet, VGG, and so on and so on. And last one, CoreML, this is a library or component for iOS, just to running this model on mobile devices. So this is like 4 different dimensions, and we can compare this one with that one, or in different combination. It's like isolated islands. Okay, I need the cat, because usually presentation without cat, not good presentation, and I have a cat. but also you'll have a code. So here is a code and cat together. So what do you want to do? We have image and we want to recognize what we have on this image. Here is Python code, but don't worry, it's quite simple. This is the whole code which you want to use to make prediction what is on this image. And here is you provide the path to cat. Here is you have a model, for this case ResNet 50. This model already prepared for you. You need only download it. So you need only network to download once and keep it somewhere on your computer. And after this you're running, and this model said you have at least 3 possibility: Tabby, Lynx, and Egyptian cat. This actually looks like Tabby, quite good, but Lynx, so. What I want to show now that we have a lot of models which are already built by somebody, prepared by somebody, and we can reuse it because it's available. About infrastructure, what we can do when we have models. So we want to host it somewhere, for example in cloud, Google Cloud, Amazon, or Azure, or whatever on your own computer. This is one dimension. Second dimension, you can use, for example, already prepared services, SaaS, when you send image and it will return you answer what is on this image. Both works, and both has some problems. The problem is, first of them, you should send data outside, and the second problem is you should send data and you should spend some energy for this. And just to explain this problem, let's come back to some quite important topic, Maslow hierarchy of needs, or Maslow pyramids. Do you hear about this, right? Who knows about modern version, this pyramid? So usually we need Wi-Fi, and what else? Battery, exactly. If we don't have those two components, it will be a really bad experience, and especially people, young people, think about this. Probably me as well. Young people, okay. Anyway, when you send data outside by using internet, you need a lot of energy, and your battery will reuse much quicker. Especially send data outside. I think you know Edward Snowden. He explained what's going on with your data when you send outside, and I will not repeat. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes people are, so especially single, they feeling a bit happier because somebody read what they sent. This is a bit some positive, but on the other hand, not maybe is a good idea for all things which we have sent outside. So this is about privacy. But on the other hand, there is something like GDPR. With GDPR, we have a law limitation that we cannot send everything to outside. For example, if you have information like email or something more complicated on about your customers, you cannot send to any clouds, or you can, but you should do something for this, for example, anonymization. And probably much better will be to run those model on your mobile devices. And this is actually what happened now. So let me introduce you to concept about how we can manage this on mobile phones. So there are two competitors. So one of them is ML Core, delivered by Apple, and this announced actually 2017, and ML Kit announced by Google in this year. ML Core, this is a solution only for iPhone, iOS. This is quite obvious. ML Kit tried to do for both, for Android and for iOS. So what does mean Core ML for us? So we can think about this in this way. We have some hardware, we have some software connected with this hardware, and here is where Core ML appear. And after this, you have some delivered out the box some functionality like NLP, computer vision, and so on. But also you can reuse the model which you build outside. And here is some example how it works. Let's say you have some images, you trained your model in Cafe, and after this you transform this model to a male model. You have some transformation for this, and after you can run this model on your mobile. And actually can do for many libraries available for now. So it can be Kafka, Keras, scikit-learn, XGBoost. This is the most interesting for me framework because it really works very good. Keras TensorFlow good as well. Scikit-learn. All of them you can build outside, and later you can transform for core ML model and run this model on mobile phone. And in this year, it was announced create ML component, and this component allow you create something more, create this model a bit more simpler. So the idea is quite simple. You have some data, and let's say you have two type of data, like bananas and apple, and you move first bananas. You say this is banana, and after you moved apple, and you say this is apple. And let me show some code. So here is how you start. You just type 3 lines. After this, you select where is data with bananas, and just run it, and that's all. Actually, it works as simple as it's shown here. The problem is that it's a bit magic. That means that it works until the problem is relatively simple. But if you really want to do something more complicated, usually you want train this model outside by using TensorFlow, Keras, and so on, and do architecture on low level. In this year, it was announced about Core ML 2, and they said that there are 3 main areas which is important now. One of them is model size, second one is performance, and the last one is customization. Actually, customization, this is what I mentioned before, that it's quite important if you want to do something more complicated. Let's try and understand model size, why it's a big problem. So, for example, the example with cat, which I shown you, it's need about 100 megabytes, or a bit more, 100.5 megabytes. So if you added this model to your application will be a bit bigger. So for example, how big is your application now? Like less than 20 megabyte? Or 50 megabyte? Okay, less than 80 megabyte? 100? Okay, 100 doesn't exist. Okay, no, this is what I'm trying to explain. So imagine you have model, you should add this model to your application, and your application right now will be 100 plus your original size. This is quite bad. And there are at least 3 dimensions how you can calculate the model size. One of them is how many models do you have, because you can have more than one. Second one, how many weights. So neural network, this is combination of weights. You can think about this like arrays with numbers, which is called weights. And this weight can be representable by different of type. It can be 32, 16, and so on bits. And here is example from Apple again, that let's say you have ResNet, and you have representation 32-bit, 8-bit, and 4-bit, and those different looks like this. But on the other hand, this is not simple as is shown here, so we can reduce the size, but also reduce the quality. So the idea is you should find kind of trade-off when you can reduce size by acceptable, good enough quality level. So this is one thing what they think. Another idea is about performance. So imagine you have a model and you want running this model, let's say 100 images what you made. And what you're doing normally, you're running in iterative way. So you run first one, it's predict, second one, predict, third one, last one. And you need the whole time like this for items. But you can run in a bit more efficient way if you start, let's say, in this way. You run first one, second one, and so on and so on. So you have some batches, and you can run this in batch mode. This is actually not new thing. Actually, if you work with architecture, what usually happened, especially with big data architecture, you have some batches, because batches save resource, time, and so on. And last point, what was mentioned on last conference about customization, and what Apple tried to help us, like developer, allow us going to deeper inside model and do something more complicated. But for this you need more knowledge than only, let's say, C or Objective or Swift and so on. A few other ideas about mobile devices, because this is not only about iPhone, Android, and so on. So here is Raspberry Pi, and for a long time you cannot run TensorFlow on Raspberry Pi. From July this year, yes, in July you can run it. So 1.9 version TensorFlow and 9 Raspberry, and you can run it. Of course, it can be a small model because you cannot run a big one, but it sounds amazing. Like you can do something very interesting by using Raspberry Pi, like detect face or compare, let's say, is the same person or not. If you want to play around a bit with ML, you have some good resources like this. You can go one by one when explain how to run TensorFlow on iOS. The same you have how to run on Android, so you can do it. It's quite simple stuff. And another stuff which I won't mention today, it's a bit different that I explained before, but this is very interesting. The idea is, right now we have, by the way, do you know how many devices we have in the world? Like more or less billions plus, right? Yeah, like few billions, even more. Actually, this is interesting that we have right now about 7 billion people on this planet, but devices which be more, because we have sometimes more than one. And what is interesting about, I don't have this report here, but you can check by yourself, and you can find this in the internet. So the people will have devices, but will not have access to electricity to charge these devices. This is quite interesting. So the number of people who has access to electricity is smaller than number of devices. This is quite interesting things. But if you start think about this, you have billions of devices. You have some cores, some hardware on those devices, and this hardware is quite good one, especially on iPhones, new iPhones. It's really good one, and it will be good to reuse in some way. So if you connected those stuff together and running kind of powerful network, you can do few things. First of all, you can train your model on locally, and this is good because let's say Google, you have some big company, big application, and how you can train your model. You can collect the whole data on each devices, send those data to server, and running a model on the server. This is one approach. And second approach, you can run a model locally, build a new model, and send only data. That means changes what happened on the model. Here is the idea. So let's say we have a model initial point, and we deploy this model for the whole our devices. Later, this user do something on this mobile and change, and this model retrained locally, and they have another state. After this, this another state we will send to mobile phones, to center our server, and collect together, usually average or some other way we aggregate those deltas and create a new model, like n uses dots. Instead of dots, let's say we have something rectangle or whatever, and provide this rectangle again to the whole devices. And in this way, you will save on power. You don't need huge infrastructure to build it. Second one, about data protection. You don't need send data outside you will send only a piece of your model, only changes on model happened. And plus one, actually in this way, the model will be more customizable, at least for some cases, because you don't need wait for, let's say, a few days or a few months just to update your model locally. You will have trained your model in real time. So does it mean it will be replace the classical path? Probably no, but it sounds like a good alternative, like two separated paths which can live together, and sometimes it can make sense more, sometimes it can make sense less, but the idea is quite interesting. This idea was introduced by Google one year ago, and there are some other companies that try apply this as well. So this is more or less all from my side for today. If you have any question, you can reach out me on any social network. If you need some help with machine learning, because this is my area, I can help. Less about mobile, because I only prepared some simple application some times ago, and I don't remember how I do it. But if you need if you have some question about machine learning and how to run in this on how to customize and so on, please ask me. Thank you very much. Who wants to run a model on mobile phone after this presentation? Because, for example with CAT, you have this model, you should just translate this model to ML core model and just run it. And after this, connect to your web camera, and that's all. So it looks like if you can prepare simple application, you can start use machine learning even now. That's why I asked who won't do it after this presentation. Or even another question, maybe a bit less technical, but more ethical or visionary. What do you think about those few movies in the start, especially China? Do you like it, this idea? Or you have some question?
Actually, we are going to build our own smart city, so I think it is a great idea, and I think it's good to apply this to Poland. So I hope we'll succeed, and you all will be scored soon.
Okay.
No, just kidding. I think that's the dark part of the AI. And that's why I think we should think about keeping our data inside our devices. So, but as I said in the previous presentation, I think it is quite immature yet, this technology, to use it on our phones, because we are destroying the lowest part of Maslow Pyramid, as you said. So we will drain our battery and Wi-Fi. So
yeah. About maturity, actually, it's like normal software. When you create a new software, it contains some bugs, some problems, architecture, and so on. But usually, you need some time, like 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years, just to stabilize. Core ML, it's announced 1.5 years ago, so it looks like much better than alpha or beta. Probably might be not enough for production, but I think it's good enough to start, at least try to use in not critical path.
So I have a question.
I didn't see you.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. You just told me that my company will die in 5 years. So because we're not using machine learning yet. So I want to know if it's just a slogan by some VC, or do you really believe that companies that will not use machine learning in 5 years will die?
It's not like absolute truth, but there are some good report McKinsey prepared about this, how it will be changed, and if you need some statistical, I highly recommend check some of them, McKinsey reports, especially few last. They deliver a lot of different information, but also it depends by industry. So what area your company is, what they're doing.
So I have a project management software and task management, and I do believe that we can really figure things out for the customers. So in my ideal world, when people open my software, the machine should learn their behavior, how they work. They should also check the sensors on their device and should tell me, Michael, it's almost lunchtime. You have 5 minutes to lunchtime. You should just do this task and that's it, and you will go for lunch. I mean, this would be the ideal world, but how to get there, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, it's a good question, but you know what you said sounds like good problem for machine learning, and for me it's like those companies should think about ML like as a first company, because this is a really good case to start automate. There are some because you remember this triangle what I shown. You need the data. So if you don't have good data, it will be a big problem to automate it.
Of course, but I have the data because I have thousands of customers. So we have their thousands of tasks and projects. But of course, it's a question of privacy. So to make sure that I don't mix this data with anyone else's data, and also a second thing, really, this would be a good problem to have. I mean, really, the software tells you what you have to do, based on learning how you're doing and how you're working.
About privacy, probably mobile will be some approach how you can manage this. Actually, there are at least two paths. One of them, which is classical, you anonymize your data, and after this you can do different stuff. Even you can run it in cloud. This is because I'm doing those stuff. But right now I'm thinking about mobile devices more serious, because what I mentioned, we have a lot of devices. Those devices quite powerful. It's a good idea to try to utilize in some way. Not only to prepare to make Bitcoin, but some machine learning model sometimes we can train.
Thank you.
Here is.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for the presentation, and I wanted to ask about this ML Kit framework, and if you could briefly compare it with the Core ML. And how would you use it? Is it as easy as Core ML?
So the big difference between compare ML Kit and Core ML. ML Kit is prepared for both platforms, for iOS and for Android, and they connected with iOS. How it's called? Metal, Apple Metal. So you connect to GPU straightforward. About simplicity, what I've checked, so if you work with Android code, you know how more or less this code looks like Java, and this code is not so complicated, but for me sometimes contains too many words. It can be a bit simple, but on the other hand it looks quite straightforward. So you don't need to make PhD or something more complicated to start use it. And again, this is announced in July or June, something like this, and this is only first version. I think it will be simplified. And another good stuff about ML Kit, they integrated with Firebase, and this connection, like some integration, so send data, use features and so on, much easier.
So basically the concept is the same, right?
The concept is this a bit bigger. So it's kind of answer Google for Apple, right, in this way. But for me it's a bit bigger because they try to utilize for both platforms. But on the other hand, I think people who works with Xcode, they will not like it, at least for now, because they used to use Xcode and it's not integrated with Xcode normally. So this is a bit tricky, because technically we can use for both, but people can decide they won't use it or not.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, here is.
Okay, me or? Okay.
You can start. You first one.
Yeah. So I went back for a while to the China case. There is a pretty good book right now, which is written by Kai Fuli, who was leading the Google China, who was working for Microsoft Research at AI, and he's actually showing the different angle for how we see at China, because aren't we too focused on looking at the Silicon Valley when it comes to telling that China is good or bad? Because, for example, there is a pretty good case about autonomic cars and the ethic behind this. When the United States is thinking about ethical questions, who should be killed, for example, during the accident by the autonomous car, in the same time, for China, it's enough to save bigger amount or number of people in the roads without answering those ethical questions. So, should we assume that China is evil? What do you think about this?
So this is a very interesting question, because for me it was some time ago when I found that something happened in China. I was read more about China, and this society there looks a bit different, and they think a bit different. They think more in a collective way, Confucianism. So the idea is you are not thinking about individuals, I'm the best one. They think more about how to do the best one for all of us. And this is why they don't see kind of threats or some risk in this approach, because most of them, and I've asked some China people as well, don't see problems about this. They think, okay, somebody will monitor us, control us, but if I didn't do something wrong, if I didn't do something bad stuff, it's good, because in the end game you will have better life, at least in theory. We will see how it works.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. Would you recommend using MLKit for Android and CoreML for iOS with a commonly trained model?
What is the last price? With what?
Using the two different systems with a common model trained with, say, TensorFlow.
So, again, about you ask about running those on mobile, like real application, production application, right? And or training. You asking about training model or about running for prediction, or both? Probably both.
Well, I don't have a specific use in mind at the moment, but let's say I want to use ML for a certain feature.
Yeah.
Would you recommend using MLKit on both platforms, or it's better to use two different ones? It's a question about optimization of the framework.
Okay, first one or second one? Actually, second one, MLKit, right? MLKit is a new one, and I didn't check those like some benchmark, but I truly believe that maybe next year it will be stable enough for running this in production. Maybe in this year it's a bit faster. If you ask me about Android, I think you don't have any other good choices. If you ask me about iOS, it's maybe not only technical question, because technically it can be comparable. This is more about what I said. If you work with Xcode and you used to Xcode because you know how it works, how to connect and so on, probably for you will be easier to develop stuff using CoreML. Yeah, so this is more behavioral question than technical. If you have any question more, I will stay here, and you can ask me as well. Here or somewhere around. Thank you very much.